Let's just get right into it. A major new war has just kicked off in the Middle East. And frankly, the shockwaves are already hitting everywhere. So what we're going to do right now is break down what is happening, why it's all going down now, and how this whole thing could end up impacting you directly. And look, this is the stark reality that a lot of people woke up to this morning. A coordinated military operation has been launched against Iran, and honestly, the situation is escalating by the hour. So let's get into how, and more importantly, why this all started. So it all kicked off with what looks like a meticulously planned joint first strike on February 28th, and yes, the Pentagon has already given it a name, Operation Epic Fury. All right, so here's how the first few hours played out. The whole thing kicked off at 8:10 in the morning, local time in Tehran, with an Israeli first wave. And then, almost immediately, the US jumped in, launching attacks from all their bases and aircraft carriers in the region. It didn't take long. Within just a few hours, we started getting reports of massive explosions in major Iranian cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz. And make no mistake, this was not some random assault. The first wave of these strikes was incredibly precise. I mean, they were hitting the absolute nerve centers of the Iranian regime in Tehran. We're talking about its intelligence and defense ministries, its nuclear program, key military sites, and they even targeted the residences of the president and the supreme leader. That's a huge statement. Well, what happens right after the bombs start falling? An information blackout. Almost immediately, internet connectivity inside Iran just plummeted to only 4%. And what that means is getting any verified news out of the country has become nearly impossible. This creates a real fog of war, you know? It's incredibly difficult to confirm casualties or even figure out what's happened to Iran's leadership. But Iran, they didn't just sit back and take this punch. No way. They responded with what was, frankly, shocking speed, launching their own counteroffensive called Operation True Promise 4. You know, this wasn't some delayed, debated reaction. It really suggests they were ready for this exact scenario, almost like they had a plan waiting in the wings. And their retaliation was, wow, it was widespread. Iran launched these waves of ballistic missiles and drones. But here's the twist. Their target wasn't Israel. Nope. Instead, they went directly after American military assets all across the Middle East. We're talking about targeting bases in 5 different countries at the same time. And here's the crucial point. This was not just symbolic. This quote right here confirms a direct and successful hit on a vital American command center, the headquarters for the entire U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. I mean, a state of emergency has been declared there. This is, without a doubt, a massive escalation.
So with missiles basically flying in both directions, the White House didn't waste any time. They quickly released a video address from the president, and that's where they laid out America's official objectives for what they're calling a major combat operation.
Okay, so here are the 4 official goals the administration laid out. 1, to completely destroy Iran's missile arsenal. 2, neutralize its navy, they say to protect shipping. 3, eliminate Iranian-backed proxy groups, like Hamas and Hezbollah. And finally, number 4, to guarantee that Iran can never develop a nuclear weapon.
And this is where things get a little tricky. This brings us to a major question, a really big potential contradiction in the official story. That 4th objective, the nuclear one, does that sound familiar to you? It should. Because just last year, after another mission called Operation Midnight Hammer, the administration claimed they had already completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program. So the big question is, why is it a primary goal all over again?
Right. So that apparent contradiction is exactly what's leading a lot of analysts to start looking for other motives. The unspoken reasons, the stuff you're not going to hear about in the official statements or the press conferences.
So let's just lay it out, side by side. You've got 2 very different stories here. The official one? It's all about clear military goals. But then there's this other narrative that a lot of analysts are pointing to, that this war is really a convenient distraction from domestic scandals. Maybe a show of strength after some big policy defeats, and definitely the result of pressure from allies. And you put it all together, and it starts to look like a pre-election attempt at regime change in Iran. It's impossible not to see some unnerving parallels to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Back then, the justification was weapons of mass destruction. Now it's underground nuclear tunnels. But here's a really key difference. In 2003, intelligence was, let's say, manipulated to sell the war. In 2026, we have U.S. intelligence agencies openly saying they have no evidence of an imminent threat from Iran, and yet, the attack happened anyway. And think about this. While President Bush had a coalition of the willing,
This time, it's pretty much just the US and Israel going it alone.
Okay, so why does a war happening thousands of miles away really matter to you? Let's break down the immediate global consequences, because believe me, the shockwaves are already being felt everywhere.
First up, your wallet. Oil prices jumped 20% almost instantly. Brent crude is already sitting at $80 a barrel. And listen to this. If Iran manages to block the Strait of Hormuz, and that's where 20% of the world's entire oil supply flows through, prices could absolutely skyrocket to $120 a barrel. That's a huge deal for everyone.
Next, global travel and logistics have been thrown into complete chaos. Dubai International, which is the world's busiest airport and a critical hub connecting Europe and Asia, it's been shut down indefinitely. The entire region is now basically a logistical black hole for air traffic. Just gone.
And this thing is getting bigger. The conflict is expanding. It's not just the US and Israel versus Iran anymore. Now you've got the Houthis jumping in on Iran's side. And on the other side, Saudi Arabia, France, and the UK have all signaled they're going to join with the US. This is quickly turning a regional strike into a potential global war.
So as we start to wrap this up, we are left with a whole series of critical, unanswered questions. And the first one, maybe the most important, is this. Is Iran's chain of command still intact? I mean, is the leadership still in control? Was the supreme leader injured? The answer to that question is going to determine everything they do next.
Second big question. What is Iran's military capacity right now? Did that first strike actually cripple their arsenal, or do they still have, thousands of ballistic missiles ready to launch in the next few days?
And what about the Iranian people themselves, caught in the middle of all this? Look, while many of them oppose their own oppressive regime, are they really going to risk a revolution while bombs are literally falling from the sky? Or is the focus now just going to be on pure survival?
And finally, there's this other question that's a bit closer to home for a lot of folks. Just hours, literally hours before this attack kicked off, India's prime minister was in Israel pledging solidarity. So, what does that timing mean for India's long-standing goodwill and its whole diplomatic position in the Middle East? It's a huge question. And all of that leaves us with this one final, pretty sobering thought. If you look at history, it tells us that successful regime change has never, ever been achieved just by dropping bombs from the air. So if this operation moves from the sky to the ground, if it comes to American boots actually being sent into Iran, well, that could become the defining political and military catastrophe of our generation.